You know, Emily, I really thought I could trust you. Those words hung in the air like a thick fog, their weight sinking in with each passing second. As I sat there, trying to make sense of everything, the world seemed to slow down around me. The faint beep of the machines in the hospital room became a distant hum as my mind raced. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I had always done my best for my family, raised my children with love, supported my husband through thick and thin, and now, after a lifetime of sacrifice, I had ended up here, alone, vulnerable, and betrayed. I had just woken up from surgery, my body still aching from the incision, but my heart felt even heavier. The moment I opened my eyes, I noticed something was wrong. The steady rhythm of the hospital room, the calmness of my recovery, was disrupted by an undeniable sense of unease. It wasn't just the pain from the surgery. No, it was something else, something much worse. My ring. My wedding ring. The one my husband had given me so many years ago. The one that had seen me through decades of love, loss, and everything in between. It was gone. I blinked, trying to focus. It couldn't be. I had just worn it before going under the knife. But as I looked around, I saw nothing but the sterile white of the room and the cold, indifferent machinery. It was like my entire world had turned upside down. I slowly sat up, my head spinning. That's when I saw Emily. She stood at the foot of my bed, her face painted with that usual, controlled smile. But today, there was something different. There was a glimmer of guilt in her eyes that I hadn't noticed before. She approached me slowly, almost cautiously, as if she knew the storm was about to hit. "How are you feeling, Grandma?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. I could barely find my voice, but when I did, the words came out colder than I expected. "Where's my ring, Emily?" I didn't need to ask the question twice. The look on her face said it all. She froze, her eyes darting nervously. Then, without a hint of remorse, she asked me the question that would haunt me forever. "Why do you look so crushed?" The audacity. The nerve. I couldn't believe it. How could she stand there, acting as if nothing was wrong, after what she had done? It was my ring, my husband's last gift to me. And she had taken it. In the middle of all my vulnerability, she had betrayed me. The anger that bubbled up inside me was almost overwhelming, but I held it back. This wasn't the time for a confrontation. Not yet. I needed to understand the full extent of her actions first. I took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. "I don't know, Emily. Maybe because you've crossed a line you can't undo." She didn't flinch. She didn't even look sorry. But I knew. I knew she was hiding something, and I was determined to find out exactly what. This wasn't the first time I had felt her distance, her coldness. But now it was clear. This was more than just a misunderstanding. This was betrayal. And as much as I wanted to scream, I knew one thing for sure. I would make her regret ever thinking she could get away with it. The silence in the room felt heavier than the pain in my body. I could still feel the cold air of the hospital room and the sterile scent that seemed to cling to everything. But now, it was overshadowed by something far worse, betrayal. I had just returned from surgery, my body sore and fragile, and the first thing that hit me wasn't the discomfort from the procedure. It was the realization that something precious had been taken from me. My wedding ring, the symbol of everything my husband and I had built together, was gone. And it wasn't just lost. No, it had been stolen. I tried to push the panic away as Emily stood there, her smile just a little too forced. She seemed oddly calm, almost like she knew something I didn't. "Is something wrong, Grandma?" Her voice had that sweet, practiced tone, the one that usually meant she was trying to cover up something. But I wasn't fooled anymore. I didn't need to ask what happened to the ring. The look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She had taken it. I could feel my hands tremble, not from weakness but from the rising anger I was trying desperately to contain. I took a slow breath and then another, willing myself to stay calm. If I reacted too quickly, if I let the emotions overwhelm me, she would win. And I wasn't about to let that happen. "You're hiding something, Emily," I said softly, each word carrying the weight of years of trust that had been shattered. She blinked, almost too quickly, and then her eyes darted to the door as if looking for an escape route. But there was nowhere to go now. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, her voice wavering just slightly. I could see her hands fidgeting with the hem of her blouse, a sign of discomfort she wasn't even aware she was giving away. She knew I knew, and that made her nervous. "Don't play games with me," I said, my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. "Where's my ring, Emily?" She looked at me for a long moment, and for a second, I almost thought she might confess. But then she did something I hadn't expected. She stepped closer, put on that perfect, fake smile, and said, "Why do you look so crushed?" The audacity of her words hit me like a slap in the face. How dare she? How could she stand there and pretend nothing was wrong when she had taken something from me that could never be replaced? The anger was boiling inside me, but I swallowed it down. Now wasn't the time to lose control. I had to play this carefully. "You've crossed a line, Emily," I said, my voice quieter now, but still firm. "And I'm going to make sure you regret it." She froze. For a moment, I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes, but it was quickly masked by her usual indifference. She took a step back, her eyes now darting around the room as if looking for a way to escape the tension she had created. But there was no escaping this. I wasn't going to let her walk away. Not this time. "You think you can take what's mine and get away with it?" I whispered, my words low and measured, each one a promise that would be kept. I wasn't the same woman I had been before the surgery. No, now I had nothing to lose. And Emily, she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The following days felt like an endless stretch of time. The hospital room, once filled with the hustle and bustle of nurses and doctors, was now silent, save for the occasional beeping of the machines keeping me alive. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, about the betrayal. It was like my whole world had shifted on its axis, and nothing was the same anymore. Emily's cold, calculated smile was still burned into my mind, a stark reminder of how far she would go to get what she wanted. The surgery had been painful, but the emotional pain? That was something far worse. I had raised my children with love, given everything I had to make sure they were happy, but now, I was left wondering where I had gone wrong. Why had Emily done this to me? Why had she taken my ring, a symbol of my love and my life with my husband? I stared at the empty space where my ring should have been. The absence of it felt like an open wound, raw and exposed. I tried to ignore the ache, but it was impossible. Emily had crossed a line, and I was not going to let it slide. I knew I couldn't confront her just yet, not until I had all the information. I needed to be smart, to make sure I didn't act in haste. So, I bided my time. Every time Emily came into my room, her fake concern oozing from every word she spoke, I kept quiet, observing, listening. The calmness she exuded was nothing but a mask, and I could see right through it. Each visit made me more certain. She was hiding something. I just had to figure out what. Days passed, and Emily's visits became more frequent. She acted as though nothing had happened, her voice sweet and her movements slow, like she was trying to lull me into a sense of security. But I wasn't fooled. I had lived long enough to recognize manipulation when I saw it. I wasn't going to let her control this situation. One day, when she entered the room with that same practiced smile, I decided it was time to act. "Emily," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was racing in my chest. She looked at me, her eyes widening ever so slightly. "I know what you did," I continued, my gaze unwavering. She froze, the color draining from her face for a moment before she quickly masked it with that fake smile again. "What are you talking about, Grandma?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the tension in her voice. "You took my ring," I said, my words cutting through the air. "I want it back. Now." She took a step back, her eyes darting to the door, as if she were searching for a way out. But there was no escape. She had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. This was it. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her voice cracking ever so slightly. I leaned forward, not missing the way her hands fidgeted with the sleeve of her blouse. "Stop lying, Emily. I know you took it, and I want it back." She took another step back, but this time, I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She was caught, and she knew it. I watched her carefully, my mind already working on my next move. I wouldn't let her get away with this. Not this time. She might think she could outsmart me, but she was wrong. I had seen enough to know that sometimes, the best way to handle a snake is to let it coil itself into a trap. And Emily? She had just stepped right into mine. The tension in the room was palpable as Emily stood frozen in front of me. I had cornered her, and she knew it. Her usual calm demeanor was nowhere to be found. I could see the panic flickering behind her eyes, though she was trying desperately to mask it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just looked at me, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. The silence stretched on, but I wasn't going to break it. I wasn't the one who had done something wrong here. I was the one who had been betrayed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Emily spoke, but her voice was shaky, uncertain. "Grandma, I don't know what you think you're implying, but," I interrupted her, my voice firm. "You took my ring, Emily. And now, you're going to give it back." The words were sharp, precise, and there was no mistaking the resolve in my tone. She flinched, just slightly, but it was enough. I could see the guilt creeping into her features now, no longer masked by her feigned concern. "I didn't take it," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. She was lying, and we both knew it. "I don't know where it is. Maybe you misplaced it." I shook my head slowly. "You're not fooling me. I know you took it, and I'm not going to let this go." Emily's eyes flicked to the door, and I knew she was thinking about leaving, about escaping this confrontation. But she couldn't run from this. Not now. I had made up my mind. I was done being the passive one in this relationship. "If you think you can get away with stealing from me, you're wrong," I said, my voice steady, unwavering. She stood there for a few more seconds, her mind clearly racing. I could see her weighing her options, trying to decide what to do next. She must have thought that if she just remained calm enough, I would back down. But I wasn't going to. Not this time. Finally, she exhaled a shaky breath, and I saw her shoulders drop slightly. Okay, I'll tell you the truth," she said, her voice quieter now. She stepped closer to me, lowering her gaze as if ashamed. I raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. "I took the ring," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I did it for a reason. I needed the money. I thought if I sold it, just for a little while, I could fix everything, the bills, the debts. It wasn't personal." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, I didn't know how to react. My heart sank as the weight of her confession hit me. How could she have done this? How could she have taken something so precious from me for her own selfish reasons? My head was spinning with disbelief. I had never imagined she would betray me like this. I thought of all the years I had spent raising my children, the sacrifices I had made for them, for the family. And now, this is how they repaid me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "You could have come to me," I said softly, my voice trembling just a little. "You could have asked for help, but instead, you took what wasn't yours. You took my trust, Emily." Her eyes met mine, and I could see the guilt in them, but it wasn't enough. She had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. "I'm sorry," she muttered, her voice small. "I didn't know what else to do, but I'll make it right. I swear I will." I looked at her, not sure what to feel anymore. The damage was done. My trust, my respect for her, had been shattered. "You can't just make it right," I said, my voice steady, but my heart heavy. "You've taken more than just a ring. You've taken something I can never get back." She stood there, silent, knowing I was right. She had betrayed me, and nothing could change that. Not even an apology. Not even an empty promise to fix things. Days passed since Emily's confession, but the silence in the house was suffocating. It wasn't just the loss of my wedding ring that haunted me. It was the realization that my trust in her had been completely shattered. Every visit she made felt like a performance, her fake kindness only making the tension thicker. I could see the unease in her eyes whenever she looked at me now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still just a pawn in her game. She was playing the part of the remorseful daughter-in-law, but I wasn't fooled anymore. I had been around long enough to know when someone was acting, and Emily was no exception. As the days went by, I watched her closely. I noticed the little things, the way she avoided eye contact when she entered the room, the way her hands fidgeted when she thought I wasn't paying attention. But what stood out to me the most was the way she spoke. Her voice was softer now, gentler, but it felt rehearsed. I had to admit, part of me wanted to believe she was truly sorry. But the other part of me, the part that had been hurt so deeply, knew better. Trust wasn't something you could just fix with a few words. It had to be earned back, and I wasn't sure if Emily even understood that. It was the small things that told me everything I needed to know. The way she spoke to my friends when they visited, the way she subtly made sure to remind them of how much she was helping me, as though she needed constant validation. She wasn't helping me because she cared. She was doing it because she wanted to prove something. She wanted to paint herself as the dutiful daughter-in-law, the one who had made a mistake but was now redeeming herself. But I knew the truth. She was trying to manipulate me into believing she had changed, and I wasn't about to let her get away with it. So, I did what I had to do. I kept my distance. I didn't confront her directly. Instead, I observed, quietly, letting her think I was still in the dark. I knew it was only a matter of time before the cracks in her act would show. And sure enough, one evening, as I sat in my favorite chair, watching the sun set, I overheard Emily on the phone. She thought I was asleep, but I was wide awake, my ears straining to hear. "I don't know how long I can keep this up," she said, her voice low and tinged with frustration. She's not buying it anymore. I can see it in her eyes. I leaned back in the chair, my heart racing. I had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed like that made the pain cut even deeper. She wasn't sorry. She was only sorry she hadn't been able to pull off the act for longer. It was all about her, all along. I felt a lump rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I wasn't going to cry over this. Not anymore. I had raised my children to be better than this, to be kind, compassionate, to value family over anything else. And now, here I was, stuck in a situation where the one person I thought I could count on had turned into a stranger. Emily hung up the phone, unaware that I had heard every word. She came into the room and sat down next to me, her usual smile in place. "You okay?" she asked, her voice sweet, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just tired," I replied, my voice steady. I could feel the anger bubbling just beneath the surface, but I kept it in check. I wasn't going to let her see me break. Not now. Not after everything. I had learned a long time ago that sometimes the best way to handle a situation like this was to sit back, observe, and wait. Emily might have thought she could fool me, but I had all the time in the world to make her see that I wasn't someone she could manipulate so easily. The game had changed, and this time, I was the one calling the shots. The days following that moment were a blur, but one thing was clear. Emily was getting more desperate by the day. I watched her carefully, and with every visit, her attempts at feigning concern grew more exaggerated. She brought me flowers, helped me with simple tasks, and made sure to remind me how much she was doing for me. But the more she tried, the more obvious it became that she was only interested in one thing, her own image. It was all an act, and I wasn't fooled. I had lived too long to not recognize when someone was playing a game. I had seen it all before, the manipulative tactics, the sweet words, the false promises. But this time, Emily had crossed a line. I could no longer pretend that everything was fine. She had taken something from me, something I couldn't get back, and I wasn't about to let her get away with it. One evening, as I sat in the living room, I noticed Emily's hands were shaking slightly as she set a cup of tea in front of me. It was subtle, but I caught it. The small signs. The things she thought I wouldn't notice. She was nervous, and I could tell it wasn't because she was concerned about my health. It was because she was worried about what I knew. The game she had been playing was starting to unravel. I didn't speak immediately. Instead, I waited. I wanted her to make the first move. I wanted to see how far she would go. She sat down across from me, trying to appear casual, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She was struggling to maintain the facade. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, her voice almost too sweet. "Better," I replied simply, meeting her gaze. I watched as her smile faltered just for a second. She was looking for an opening, some way to steer the conversation in a direction that would make me feel guilty, make me believe that I had misjudged her. But I wasn't buying it. "You know, I've been thinking," I said, my voice steady but cold. "About everything. About what happened." Her eyes widened just slightly, and I could see the panic flicker behind her eyes. She quickly regained her composure, but I had already seen enough. She was getting caught in her own web. "What do you mean, Grandma?" she asked, her voice trembling just a bit. I could hear the fear creeping in, but she was trying so hard to hide it. "You know exactly what I mean," I said, leaning forward slightly. "You took my ring, Emily, and you lied about it." She looked down at the table, avoiding my gaze. I could see her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles white. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said softly, but the sincerity was nowhere to be found. I wasn't going to let her off the hook that easily. "You didn't mean to hurt me?" I repeated, the words slow and deliberate. "Emily, you didn't just take a piece of jewelry. You took something much more valuable than that. You took my trust." She flinched, but I didn't stop. "And now, you're trying to act like everything is fine. Like you didn't just betray me for your own gain." She opened her mouth to say something, but I raised my hand, stopping her. No. I'm done listening to your excuses. You've done enough damage. Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't moved. Not anymore. She had gone too far, and no amount of fake remorse would fix it. She opened her mouth again, but I cut her off. I want the truth, Emily. And I want you to understand something. This isn't just about the ring anymore. It's about everything. It's about what you've done to this family, to me. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Emily sat there, her face pale, her lips trembling as she tried to hold back her tears. But I wasn't going to soften. She had crossed the line, and now she had to face the consequences. I've seen the way you've treated me, the way you've manipulated everyone around you. But I'm not going to let you do it to me anymore. I'm done being your pawn. She didn't speak. She just sat there, her face crumpling as the weight of my words settled in. I didn't feel pity for her. I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt nothing but a quiet satisfaction that I had finally stood up for myself. You've shown me who you really are, Emily, I said, my voice firm. And I won't forget it. She didn't respond. She just sat there, her shoulders slumped, as if she had already given up. Maybe she had. I didn't care. The game was over. And I had won. The following day, the tension in the house seemed unbearable. Emily had barely said a word to me since our confrontation, and the quiet between us was deafening. I could feel her presence in the house, but it was like she had become a ghost, avoiding eye contact, staying out of my way. I knew she was trying to figure out what to do next, but I wasn't going to make it easy for her. I wasn't about to let her think she could just slip back into my life like nothing had happened. I had been through too much to just let it go. I wasn't going to be her victim anymore. The days dragged on, and I kept my distance, as did Emily. She spent most of her time in the kitchen, doing the bare minimum, and when she did come into the living room, it was always to make some excuse, like asking if I needed something or offering to help me with a task. I saw through it all. She was trying to make amends, but I wasn't interested in her empty gestures. I had given her a chance, a lifetime of chances, and now it was too late. One evening, as I sat in the living room, I heard the familiar sound of Emily's footsteps approaching. I didn't look up at first, just continued to stare out the window, watching the sun set. But I could feel her eyes on me, and I knew she was waiting for me to acknowledge her. Finally, I spoke, my voice calm but firm. What is it, Emily? She hesitated for a moment before she spoke, her voice softer than usual. Grandma, I wanted to apologize again. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I just need you to know that I regret it. I made a huge mistake, and I'll do whatever it takes to fix it. I turned to look at her then, meeting her gaze. There was something different in her eyes now, something that hadn't been there before. I couldn't quite place it, but I could see the sincerity in her face. Still, it wasn't enough. Not after everything she had done. You don't get to fix this, Emily, I said, my voice steady but laced with the hurt that still lingered inside me. You've taken more than just a ring. You've taken my trust, my respect, and you can't just expect to get them back with a few words. Her face fell, and for the first time, I saw the genuine remorse in her eyes. She took a step closer, her hands wringing together in front of her. I understand, she whispered. But please, don't shut me out. I want to make things right. I know I messed up, but I can't lose you too. I didn't respond immediately. I could feel the weight of her words, but I wasn't ready to let my guard down just yet. She had hurt me deeply, and trust wasn't something I could give away so easily. You've already lost me, Emily, I said, my voice low. You lost me the moment you chose to betray me. I'll never look at you the same way again. You can't just expect things to go back to how they were. Emily stood there, staring at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and regret. I could see that she was struggling to find the right words, but I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. I had heard enough. I can't help you, I continued. Not anymore. You've made your bed, now you have to lie in it. I've done enough for you, and I'm done. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Emily didn't say anything else. She just stood there, staring at me as if trying to process what I had just said. I didn't expect her to understand right away, but I knew I had made my point. She had made her choices, and now she had to face the consequences. I turned my attention back to the window, watching as the last light of the day disappeared over the horizon. It was over. The game was done. I wasn't going to be a part of it anymore. And Emily? She would have to figure out how to live with the choices she had made. The weeks passed by, but the silence in the house remained, heavier now than ever before. Emily continued her routine, but the strained atmosphere was unmistakable. She still helped with small tasks, but there was no longer any warmth in her gestures. It was as if she was going through the motions, trying to repair what she had broken, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't hide the fact that things had changed. I had changed. My heart had hardened, and I couldn't go back to the way things were. I wasn't sure if Emily truly understood the gravity of what she had done, but I was certain of one thing. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. Every time she came into the room, trying to act like everything was fine, I reminded myself of why I had to stay strong. She wasn't the person I had once trusted, and I wasn't going to give her the chance to prove me wrong again. One evening, I sat in the living room, flipping through an old photo album, remembering better days. My husband's smile, my children's laughter, it all seemed like a lifetime ago. But then, as I turned the page, I heard the soft sound of footsteps behind me. Emily had come in, and I could feel her standing there, waiting for me to acknowledge her. She didn't speak at first, just stood there, her hands folded in front of her. I could hear her shallow breaths, and I knew she was waiting for me to say something. Finally, I closed the album and looked at her. "What do you want, Emily?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. She hesitated before speaking, her eyes lowered. "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. For everything. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I want you to know that I regret it. I've been trying to do better, but I know it's not enough. I just want you to forgive me." Her words hung in the air, but I didn't feel moved. The truth was, forgiveness wasn't something I could just hand over. It wasn't something she could earn back with a few words. It had to come from within me. And right now, all I could feel was the bitterness of what had happened. "You've hurt me more than you know," I said, my voice quiet but resolute. "I can't just forget what you did. You took something from me, something that can never be replaced." I could see the guilt in her eyes, but there was something else too, something I hadn't noticed before. Fear. Emily was afraid. She was afraid of losing me, afraid of the consequences of her actions. But fear alone wouldn't change anything. "I can't forgive you yet, Emily," I said, my heart heavy. "You need to understand that trust doesn't come back just because you say sorry. It takes time. It takes actions." She nodded slowly, her face pale. "I understand," she whispered. But I could tell, deep down, she still didn't fully grasp the weight of what she had done. She had taken my trust, my love, and thrown it away for her own gain. And now, she was left to pick up the pieces. But some things could never be fixed. I watched her turn and walk away, her steps slow and hesitant. The door clicked shut behind her, and for a moment, I sat there in silence. There was no sense of victory in what I had just said. It wasn't a triumph, not in the way I had expected. There was no satisfaction in knowing that I had stood up for myself. What was left now was just emptiness. The relationship I once had with Emily was gone, and no amount of words could bring it back. I was alone in this, but at least I could say that I was finally free. Free from the manipulation, free from the deceit. It wasn't the life I had imagined, but it was the life I had now, and I was going to have to learn to live with it. The weeks that followed were filled with a strange kind of quiet, the kind that settles in when the dust of a storm finally starts to clear. I went through the motions of my daily routine, waking up, having breakfast, sitting by the window with a cup of tea, and watching the world go by. But despite the calm, the weight of what had happened still lingered, heavy and unshakable. Emily had tried to make amends, but no matter how hard she tried, the damage had already been done. She had crossed a line, and nothing she could do would bring back the trust one once had for her. I had learned that lesson the hard way. One evening, as I sat in my favorite chair by the window, I found myself reflecting on the life I had built. The years I had spent raising my children, the sacrifices I had made, the love I had given. All of it now felt like a distant memory, tainted by betrayal. It was hard not to wonder where it had all gone wrong. Was I too trusting? Too generous? Or had I just been blind to the reality that Emily had never really cared about me the way I thought she did? It didn't matter now. What mattered was that I had finally found the strength to let go. I didn't need her approval or her forgiveness anymore. I had my own peace to find, and I was going to take it back. Over time, Emily had stopped trying to engage with me. She still helped around the house, but her presence felt distant, almost like she was a stranger living under my roof. I no longer felt the need to confront her or make her see the error of her ways. I had already said everything that needed to be said, and now it was up to her to figure out her own path. The weeks turned into months, and I found myself slowly healing. It wasn't an easy process, and I still had my moments of sadness, but I began to realize something important. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is to let go of people who don't value you. The weight that had once been so heavy on my chest started to lift. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I had accepted the reality of what had happened, and in doing so, I had freed myself from the emotional burden of trying to fix something that was never meant to be fixed. One afternoon, as I sat in the garden, watching the flowers bloom, I heard the door open behind me. Emily stood there, hesitating for a moment before stepping outside. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there, her gaze on the ground. "Grandma," she finally said, her voice softer than it had ever been. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I'm truly sorry. I've been working on myself, trying to understand where I went wrong." I didn't respond right away. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but that wasn't enough. It wasn't about her apology anymore. It was about me. It was about my healing. "I've heard enough, Emily," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You've had your chance, and you didn't take it. Now, it's time for both of us to move on. I've forgiven you, but that doesn't mean things go back to the way they were. I've learned to let go, and it's time you did the same." She stood there in silence, the weight of my words settling in. It wasn't the kind of closure I had once hoped for, but it was the closure I needed. As she turned to walk back inside, I realized that I didn't need her to be a part of my life anymore. I had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, you have to let go, even if it means losing the people you once loved the most. And with that, I finally felt free.